Well, hello, welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. Back again this Thursday to talk more about the role playing games. And again, we'll be talking about my favorite role playing game of all time, which is the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And one more time, I'll be bringing back Doomswords again to talk with me about first edition Dungeons and Dragons because somehow or another we need to find somebody who knows something about it to talk about it. I'll be bringing him on here shortly when he's all set and ready to go. In the meantime, just a little recap. We've already talked about creating characters. We've talked a little bit about spell casting, talked a little bit about combat. In fact, we started with combat and the attic document and how that stuff went. So if first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is something you're really interested in, please go ahead and review those streams that we have done to get that information as well. Today, didn't have anything specific really to plan other than we're trying to fill in some of the gaps and that we talked about. So I figure we'll add some replies to some of this stuff that the Dungeon Master's Guide put in there based on some of the things that we had mentioned before. So we'll get things keyed up here. Well, they answer some comments. What do we got here? Hey. Of course, I'm sitting too far away from the keyboard. Let me scoot up a little bit and then scare everybody by zooming in real close. All right, good evening, all. As hopefully he's ready to go. I don't see him all set yet on his camera or his stage. Hey, all right, there he is. How about we bring him on? Let me go and do this the appropriate way. Oh, we discussed this. The appropriate way to bring her on was this sound.
Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot.
Yes.
Hello, gents. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, good evening again there, Doom Swords. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am alive, which is great. Great.
Yeah. That's how I really feel, but I decided to put on my best face for everyone. I mean, I'm sorry it's not particularly attractive, but
That's your best
that is
face?
what it is.
Ooh, I guess we're in trouble.
Yes. Yeah.
Mine
That's
isn't
better than
much of
like
an
an Oni
improvement.
mask or something.
Let's all go buy those Halloween masks, right? The Captain Kirk masks that we can wear for this.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we got a few that are tuned in and watching. Awesome. That's excellent. So, again, you and I talked a little bit about it, what we wanted to do. We wanted to fill in some of the gaps and stuff for some of the things we talked about. There's still plenty and stuff to go. But we'll kick things off. One of the things that I wanted to start out with, and we mentioned hirelings before and followers. So there was pages out of the Dungeon Master's Guide that I copied and pasted. I wasn't real happy about it, but this is what it turned out to look like. Let's see. What do I got to? Oh, I got to remove that one. There we go. Followers
That's
for
good
upper
enough.
level player characters. We talked about henchlings and hirelings and stuff, but when they reach characters reach a certain level, they are able to get followers. Right? Your players know that upon reaching certain levels and doing certain things, such as building a stronghold, and we'll go into that sometime too, they will be entitled to attract a body of followers. These followers might be fanatically loyal servants of the same deity, or deities in the case of clerics, stalwart admirers of fighters, or whatever. Your players will eventually turn to you for information on who or what they gain, and when the time actually comes, they have reached the level and done the right things, you will be able to quickly inform each and every one concerned of what fate has decreed by the way of followers. Right, and here's some of the guidance in there. The cut and paste didn't come out as well as I would have liked, but we've got some. Clerics,
Hey,
right?
if I can interject,
Yeah, go
for
for it.
anybody following along, that's page 16, DMG,
Oh
PDF, or
yeah, I didn't
whatever,
cut and paste the.
hardcover, whatever you got.
I didn't get the pages out of it. I just pulled the.
It's probably just worth mentioning it anyway, which I'll
Yeah, yeah.
do
So
if
if somebody
people
else
want to
has their
look at their
book, they want to
books.
follow along, and they can flip to those pages and follow along on their
Right.
own. Absolutely. Yang says he needs some hirelings. Ah, I
You
think
have
the
to
two
have
of us need
coin,
hirelings.
friend.
We need fanatical devotees so that we don't have to prepare all this stuff, that it's ready for us to go when we get here. So,
Yeah. I need some fanatical devotees, just in general, right?
oh, for anything, right? All purpose. Uh, I spent my holiday week doing nothing when I should have been preparing this stuff, But
Hey, you got
everybody
to do
needs a
nothing
balance.
sometimes.
Yep. For clerics, roll each category. All are 0 level men at arms. These are the clerics' followers, but they aren't clerics per se. These are men at arms that join them to help them manage their stronghold, I guess you could say, or temple or whatever that they had set up. These are their guards and things of that nature that goes with a nice little table here that you can roll on. All right.
Yeah, and I really like that. That it's, enough details put into it that it's split out by what looks to be, class or whatever, or at least some of them. And that is something that I want to say something about. That is that there's a goal in AD&D that isn't as much evident in a lot of other systems, at least in the core stuff, and that's to eventually arrive at the point where you have a stronghold, where you reach name level, and whatever is specified in your character class for what happens at name level, if it
Mhm.
does, the DMG gives you some guidelines on how to address that. Everybody wants to build a castle.
Sure, sure. And part of it was is you've read the player's handbook. But what do these things mean? The descriptions next to this.
Right.
Myrmidon. What does that have to do with anything? Right? Just is this just some sort of descriptor they put on there for the heck of it? Well, not really. They've got this is a holdover from as I picture it from chainmail, where you had certain
Yeah.
levels you were a hero, then you were a superhero, and they kind of tweaked it a little bit, or Gary did at the very least, tweaked it a little bit to come up with this sort of thing. And at your name level, when you become a lord of some sort, depending on what table you look at, you gain these followers that come to you attract a body of them to come help you out. They're,
Exactly. And it
they're,
might be a little bit off topic, but that's one thing that retro clones typically don't do. Which and ended up getting dropped from. I mean, it was dropped out of 2E even, right?
right.
The idea of different class names based on
Mhm.
the class's level, and I think that's a mistake.
It's a fun part of the game. It's well, I mean, you've reached a certain level. There's not a whole lot of monsters or dungeons or anything that are super challenging anymore. So you want to play at the world level, or at least the regional level, and influence all of that on a grander scale than just running in and out of the dungeon. And this is how you do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and the DM's individual world, he can assign whatever because
Hmm.
the AD&D ones, any of the ones in OD&D, AD&D, they're not perfect.
No.
They're generic class level titles,
Hmm.
and the DM is expected to tailor that to his specific world, and I think it adds a lot. It gives you a goal, in addition to just gaining a level.
This is where the wargaming should really start to take over. Yes. Um,
Indeed.
in earlier editions, you were expected, like original Dungeons and Dragons, you were supposed to grab chainmail out, and then Gary Gygax created his own war game supplement to go with it. Was it? Oh, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Spells and Swords or something like that.
Yeah, swords and
Yeah,
spells. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that was 1978. And yeah, you can use a battle system, but before I was going to actually mention for people who are more familiar with BX does have level titles, but Beck Me actually, I think in the companion set, that teal covered box,
Hmm.
it did actually introduce War Machine. So that was sort of Frank Mincer's and with whatever Gygax input was involved was sort of the way that you could do that kind of thing within BX or BECME,
Sure. My favorite war game style to play when you're playing at this domain level, if you want to call it that, was a game called High Fantasy, and that's the first role playing game that I ever played. The you had the first supplement that came out with it was a bunch of adventures. In the back of it was a war games rule called Lords of Conquest, which used the character classes and everything out of the regular game, and this is what they would do on large scale battles. And it was a good description. It was really easy, plain, laid out fairly well, fairly easy to get it done. I thought it was a great system. But again, there's a alternative to Dungeons and Dragons that came out in the 70s that had wargaming built into it as well. So
Right.
fighters, right? Fighters gain their followers here, which are a group of men. You're going to have leaders, right? In addition to that, then you'll have the regular warriors and troops and followers and stuff that come out. Unlike the clerics, who just had maybe tops a few dozens, your troops and followers for a fighter type could approach hundreds. So there's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Well, you got to guard not only do you have to guard your stronghold, you got to guard the region that's surrounding it and stuff as well. And that's basically how you did with finding these followers. Rangers were a little bit of a special difference. They didn't attract a body of warriors similar to other fighters and stuff did. They attracted ranger followers, which did include special types. Let me scroll down to it. Like humans, demi-humans, animals, mounts, creatures, and special creatures. Any of those could end up being followers for the ranger type. Not only, but it wasn't just if you got ranger followers, but you could also get magic users or clerics or druids or something that would follow the ranger as well. And it would drill, and you got some nice detail that would drill down into types of animals that may come and follow you. How nice would it be to have a giant owl as one of your followers guarding your ranger stronghold? Of course, they surprise on a 1 to 5.
Yeah, right. And this is also something that you could expand out based on your world, right? You can make it
if you
whatever
didn't have
you want
particular,
go ahead.
If you didn't have a particular creature that you used in your game, substitute in one that you did.
Yeah, exactly. And we've already got, giant owl, giant lynx, and black bear and brown bear are relatively mundane in terms of creatures. But you get further into the list, and it shows that you can include magical creatures and supernatural creatures.
Yeah,
with
a little further down
the giant
on the list,
lynx,
right?
Although
I wouldn't want to mess with a brown bear or black bear.
You don't want to wrestle one?
I would not want to mess with one of them either.
Yeah. You had a nice fan comment, evidently. I just didn't want to interrupt. So,
this one here.
Everyone, if you're not already subscribed, sub to this man's channel. Yes, sir. That would be the one.
Sub to this man's channel. Awesome. Thank you very much, Dungeon Delver. Much appreciated for the shout out or whatever we want to call it here. If anybody's an expert on any of this stuff, I would put Dungeon Delver at the top tier. Yeah, and the fact that he'd come to look at my lowly channel, we're outstanding here. Must be doing something right. All right. Thanks again there, Dungeon Delver, for the shout out there. And then we got Dr. John Smiths were followers who came looking for bards called groupies. I don't know. Bards, I don't think gain followers. We'd have to look back in there on the bards.
Man, bards are followers. At least the new type of bard. They're worthless. Old style bard. That's something that's respectful. And it's respectful to the extent that when they get into, later levels, actual bard levels, you can't even pronounce the name of their colleges. So, You know,
But they
Bard
can't.
used to be a badass. Yes, they can.
Oh, a bard in first edition Dungeons and Dragons takes a lot of work to get to there. You are somebody if your character lives that long to become a bard.
Yeah, and you got to go through a bunch of rules that sort of touch all aspects of the game in order to be able to
Mm-hmm.
achieve that.
Up Yang, of course, has got a comment. Bards would have to roll the disease table if they got followers. Oh, this is the first edition AD&D Bard, not the new Bard trope. Yes, right.
Right,
Where
right.
where half dragons come from, right? Yeah. Special creatures and stuff. A copper dragon. Of course, it says roll to determine the age category of the dragon. It will, of course, possess no treasure. So, oh man, we got a dragon, but he got no treasure. Now I got to give him some. Yeah, but those are also a storm giant as a ranger follower. Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff.
Yeah, how incredible would that be, right? Um, you know, and that gives you an idea of how incredibly impressive it is for the ranger to make name level and what he gets. You know, unfortunately, a lot of characters don't end up reaching that level. Like, who can say, hey, yeah, I legitimately played a 10th level ranger that I got from level 1 to level 10. And I think, again, those class level titles uh, add something in terms of
Cool.
what you can gain uh, in the manner of prestige as a player.
Yeah. Here's a good question on here. What's harder to pronounce, the names of Bard colleges or the names of Gary's favorite pole arms? So,
Yeah, at least with the pole arms, you only had to learn like maybe 4 French words, and then they would combine in various ways to spell out each one.
discuss the cost of followers. I'm trying to recall. We did do a video about henchmen and hirelings and what it cost to equip henchmen and hirelings. But as far as your followers go, you got to provide them everything they need to do their function, right? Just the same. So if you're hiring 100 men at arms to man your castle, you got to come up with enough money for 100 spears and 100 at least suits of armor and stuff for them. So it's going to be pretty expensive. So you're not out there dropping all of your dollars or whatever, your gold that you collect on nothing. You're saving this. You got to be saving this stuff up so that when you get to this level, you've got enough money to afford to do these things as well as attract the followers.
Right. Yeah, and I would typically agree with that. I'm not familiar with a specific resource that it really kind of lays out the cost of that sort of thing, because it's more, I would assume, because it's more world building than mechanically related. Um, but yeah,
Well, you
I,
could
I
take
as
you
yeah,
could
go
take the
ahead.
tables out of the Dungeon Master's Guide for an individual follower and extrapolate it from there.
Yes, absolutely.
That would require math, and we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. No math should be involved. Yes.
Unless it's the DM doing it.
Oh, well, okay.
He can do as much math as he wants and as much world building. We're here to have fun.
Yeah, go for it. Have at it. That's what calculators are for, but they were kind of expensive in the 70s.
Yes.
For thieves, roll 46 to determine the number of lesser thieves which the character will attract, determine the race and level of each thereafter, modifying for the D% roll for level as follows. All right, so you could gain some thief followers, right, and make some adjustments for their levels and stuff that they are when you recruit them. For example, here down here, the level of the thief 5, 6, and 7, and 4 on all of these, and that equates to, dwarven, elven, gnomish, and half elven. So you're building a thieves guild. I would imagine your upkeep and collection of them would be different than manning a castle or something like this. These guys are going to be working for you, so they should be able to kind of pay a little bit of their own way. and you're just as the higher level thief providing them protection.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would basically be, in my mind, it would basically be the guildmaster member thief kind of association, which
Right.
would dictate that
Which
a contract and whatnot. And also, like in the case of certain character classes, I mean, again, it's completely and should be up to the DM. But you know, some particular character classes or some situations might warrant a follower. Just you know how you get like, I don't know, you get like popular in your social group, and then you have a dude who always wants to tag along with you and who's not really welcome. you know, so there's probably plenty of followers as well that just want to be a part of what the so it's a role playing opportunity too.
So then, if I had all these thief followers, I would technically get like 10 to 20% of everything they steal, something like that. Sure. You
Yeah,
know?
you better, or why do you have them?
Yeah.
You're a master thief, Yang.
They're going to consider you weak.
Yeah,
And
don't keep any deadbeats around, man.
they want to usurp control of your thieves guild from you.
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing here with assassins. I mean, because assassins shamefully disappeared from subsequent games upon
Yes.
attaining guildmaster or guildmistress status. Guildmistress, isn't that a feminine title? So funny how this game includes options for female players, women and girls. Isn't that? I thought that was not supposed to be the case, right? No,
Yeah, well, they said it wasn't the case.
yeah, and it's right here in the book. This sort of thing is absolutely the case. Women were definitely encouraged to play this game.
And as a matter of fact, this might actually be because I know I picked up this book real early in my childhood or whatever. I would say that this could very easily be the first time I've ever heard master mistress, right? In terms of male and female roles or titles within the same role. So who
Okay.
knows?
Well, having read a lot of books and stuff, and being a big fan of medieval history, you read a lot about the Marquis and the Marquesa, and there's some examples of that. But as
Sure.
far
In
as
medieval
in a
stuff.
game and stuff goes, they're just throwing it right in here. Yeah. So Yang says assassins are more or less part of the rogue class in 5e. Yes, you can be an assassin in 5e, and it's got some fun, cool stuff to be one. Right, but you don't start out as one of those. You start out as a rogue, and then you become a subclass of it. While assassins are basically a subclass of thief in AD&D, you start out as one and work your way through it. Yeah. Mega
Yeah,
corporation.
and that's in relation to the guildmaster, right? The
Right.
guildmaster
Or or
should, yeah,
or the
they're going
government
to take as much
taxman.
as
They take as much as they
right.
can get too.
Exactly.
One is sanctioned by law. The other one is going to be hanged by the law. One of the two.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, so included assassins and how to basically how to build your assassins guild and stuff, which could be a problem. Same with a thieves guild could be a problem if there was another one in that same city, right? So they just discuss all of that as far as your building your stuff together. Another point that I wanted to make in here was the paladin's war horse. Aside from a ranger that animals come to follow them, this is the only other place where you see that sort of thing where a paladin, and this isn't at high level, this is at fourth level that this can happen, that they will call for a war horse as detailed in the player's handbook. Magically appear, but not in actual physical form. Well, what does that mean? The paladin will magically see his or her faithful destriel in whatever locale it is currently in, and if it is thereafter up to the paladin to journey to the place and gain the steed. As a rule of thumb, the journey not be beyond 7 days ride. Gaining the mount will not be an impossible task. Creature might be wild and necessitate capturing, or it might be guarded by an evil fighter of the same level as a paladin, and the latter will have to overcome the former in mortal combat in order to win the warhorse. In short, gaining of the gesture is a task of some small difficulty, which will take a number of days, possibly 2 or more weeks, and will certainly test the mettle of the paladin. Now, nothing in there says anything that the paladin can't have help. So sounds to me like here is a quest item built right into the game for the dungeon master to use.
It is, and I think it's advantageous for the dungeon master, at least in my experience, to design that quest right away, and get the players going on it right away, because it's a simple diversion from whatever they're doing at the time, but it's actually critically important to the paladin himself. Right. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the role playing of the player playing the paladin character. But I know if I'm a paladin and I have a vision of my warhorse from my deity, then I'm going to expect my companions to follow me into the jaws of death to retrieve it.
Yes.
Paladins are the best.
Right. Let's see. Right. He talks about it. The horse will only serve you for 10 years. Thereafter, paladin must seek another mount, as the former one will be too old to be useful. So just make sure that he doesn't get hit by the ghost's age.
Yeah, for sure. And so with the paladin, and this is something I had never really considered before. I mean, I suppose the paladin would have to dispatch of the horse, right? It's not like you're going to send your war horse to a glue factory. Right?
No. Probably, what do you normally do with horses, right? You put them out to stud or something like that, right? Well, it depends. There's nothing in there that says it has to be a male horse that shows up.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true. Actually.
But you could kind of do a similar sort of thing, right? And
right.
So there's your next horse, comes from breeding stock of your old horse, and now your new quest for your new horse is to raise it and train it and stuff, right? So
that's a good point. So seeking another mount does not necessarily mean that you have to go back through the process. It could be, as the DM, that it's okay. Well, yeah, you've got a pasture. You can put your horse out here. You have all the resources at this time, because 10 years of real time should be enough, right, to gain the upper levels if you're destined to do so. Yeah.
Well, this is a good one. Yep. You'd have to stud him on the holy horses for the whole temple. Gotcha. Wonderful. Find him using if some trickery causes a paladin to seek out the war horse and find out it's a centaur. Well, technically by the rules, it has to be a horse. It has to be a war horse. Medium war horse, if I remember correctly, is what the book says it's got to be, but it's got like the hit points and durability of a heavy war horse.
Yeah, and a point. I mean, I'm not. I'm by no means some sort of medieval history buff or anything like that. But from my understanding, when you're talking about a heavy war horse, right, you're basically talking about a Clydesdale. Yeah. So that's the image you can get in your mind, and those things are huge. I can't remember the number of hands at the shoulder or whatever it is, but those horses are gigantic.
Yep. That's what you need. 1,500 pounds of horse flesh bearing down on your enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a truck, man.
Yeah.
30 kobolds, ride them down.
I named my war horse F-150. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute, he's 1,500 pounds. He's F-350. He's a 3/4 ton.
Right.
And explains in here exactly the size. It's slightly different if you compare the numbers that are in here to the ones that are in the monster manual for your horse. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a difference to them. Intelligence. They're going to be fairly intelligent, more intelligent than the average horse. In fact, at intelligence of 5 to 7, more smarter than some people. Yeah,
Well, that's certainly true. Yeah.
yeah. Number of hit points per hit die of the steed will never be fewer than 50% of the level of the paladin, i.e., a fourth level paladin means the warhorse he or she gains will have at least 2 hit points per hit die, excluding the additional bonus of +5. While a 16th level paladin special steed will have a maximum hit points of 8 per die, because that's as high as you can go on a D8, right? Plus the additional 5 for a total of 45 hit points. That's a pretty tough animal, that one is. Now,
It's a character, basically.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And he's fairly smart. He's probably smarter than half the rest of the party at 5 to 7 points. Yeah.
He's definitely smarter if played by me than half the rest of the characters or players, rather.
Sure. If the character loses paladinhood for any reason, there will be an immutable enmity between character and mount, and the former will not be able to ride the ladder while the steed will escape at first opportunity. So if you lose paladinhood, your steed is gone. He's going
Yeah, and for any
to get
reason.
away.
Yeah, and he might kick you on the way out.
Yeah. And at 45 hit points at 5 + 5 hit dice, that's going to be a heck of a slam. Yeah.
Yeah, and what are you going to do? You're going to kill your warrior, so you're going to descend into pure wickedness.
Sure. Well, I mean, send them to the glue factory, right?
Yeah. I have no more need for that war horse that was provided by my deity.
Cool. So there's some things we went in there. What else did I have here? I think I got another document. Let me remove that one. Add to stage. Stop screen. Let me presenter invite. Share screen. Which one? Window. This is something we wanted to talk about. With some guidance on thief abilities. We talked about thief abilities and stuff when we talked about character creation and stuff like that. Let me make them so I can see what's going on here. All right. Following additional explanations of thief abilities will help you prevent abuse of these activities by thieves and other characters able to use these abilities in whole or in part in your campaign. Right? You and I talked about it. There's some things that are highly abused because I think they're somewhat misunderstood and stuff as it goes. Probably on both ways around.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes it's it might be restricted too much, and sometimes it might be offered and allowed too much, right?
Yeah.
And clarification in the DMG is always the place to look if you're curious about those things.
Right. Opponents aware of the thief will be able to negate the attack form. If he knows you're there, even if you get to run around behind him in the fight, if he knows you're there, your likelihood of being able to backstab him is pretty much eliminated. So you can try hiding in the shadows, and we'll cover that a little further down, or if you've got some other means to make sure that he is unaware that you are behind him, then you can get the bonus. And one of the things here is certain creatures, otyugs, slimes, molds, etc., either negate surprise or have no definable back, thus negating this ability. You have to be able to surprise your opponent in order to do these backstab. You've got to be unaware that you're there. Invisibility works fantastic, although it doesn't make you absolutely undetectable. Invisibility just makes you unseen, which is a big bonus or a plus.
Right. There might be scent, movement of the air, sound. Well, not sound, I suppose, but any
Sure.
of a number of other scents that some creature would have. And the sort of the absence of something. I mean, being invisible can actually alert an opponent more than not being invisible. Because if they hear sounds and wonder where it comes from, that creates a certain sense of curiosity, I would say. But I find it interesting. So slimes and molds, probably, would you say that they can't be surprised? I mean, what does this imply? That they can't be surprised because they
They have no
drop.
definable back. Where are you going to backstab something that's no matter
Right, but
which way it's facing you, no matter what way. Yeah.
yeah, true. But why the statement either negate surprise? So I'm trying to think
Wouldn't
of
it
creatures that
Otiug, don't
have no chance of
they?
being surprised.
Because of the Otiug's eye stalks and stuff, you can't surprise them, if I remember correctly.
It might be. It might be. They may have no surprise whatsoever. So I just find it kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Like, I know you're not going to surprise a green slime, right? Because the green slime is going to surprise you and by dropping on you. The same thing with like a piercer or something like that. But yeah, having no back, being some sort of creature like a Zorn, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know, it's
it's
like,
a tripod. Every which way you turn, it's got the appendage
yeah,
pointed at you.
yeah,
Right,
you're probably not backstabbing that, right?
right. So again, yeah, this is probably one of the more commonly abused in either direction, either too liberal or too strict, um, of the abilities of the thief. That's done, and I've seen it in a lot of cases where it's handled incorrectly and gives either too much option to the thief or the thief never ever gets a chance to really use it.
Right. So basically, I mean, boiling it down, it should basically what be that if the opponent has the possibility of being aware of the thief, then backstab is off the table. You know, that could be like the first determination. If
Sure.
he does not, then backstab is still on the table, and you could take it down the line.
Right. If you're maneuvering around in combat, nobody's standing still, not looking around whatsoever in the middle of a fight. Your head's kind of a little bit on a swivel. You're looking for things like somebody trying to get around to a flank or something on you. Right. So
Yes.
that would negate the being able to backstab. Now, if you were unseen, hiding or something, and undetected, invisible, I would say somebody getting the jump on you being invisible definitely would be a bit of a surprise, even in the middle of a fight. Right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Or like the opposing party comes through a door, encounters the attacking party, and the thief happens to be hiding to the side. Where the guy rushes in, the thief
yeah.
comes out, stab, and you know, if he's lucky, retreats back into the shadows.
If you wonder why Yang is mentioning this, thieves definitely need to have more opportunities to backstab.
I've found that to be true when I play thieves, which is not very often. But you know, that's where consistency and an understanding between the GM and the player is of paramount importance, right?
So I'm being facetious. That's Yang's character on Tuesday night as a thief. Yeah.
Oh, well, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Oh, and he would perfectly agree. He needs more opportunities to backstab. Yeah.
yes,
So, and related to that, let's talk about hiding shadows. I think that is another one that is heavily abused both ways. Both ways. As plainly stated in
right,
the Player's Handbook, this is never possible under direct or even indirect observation. Or somebody sees you go into that corner over there, they can't see you, but they know you went there, right? A thief insists on trying, allow the attempt, and throw dice, but don't bother to read them, as the fool is as obvious as a coal pile in a ballroom. Likewise, if a hidden thief attempts movement while under observation, the proverbial jig is up for him or her. Naturally, a creature closely pressed in melee is not likely to bother with looking for some thief not directly in the line of sight, but a vision would normally extend to the thief's area of activity. Then observation rules apply. Unobserved attempts to hide in shadows must likewise stand the hazard of the dice roll. A score greater than the required number shows that the character's ability is not on a par with his or her intent. Although he or she thinks hiding has been successful, the creature looking in that direction will note a suspicious outline form or whatever. Note also that the thief hiding in shadows is still subject to detection just as if he or she were invisible. See invisibility detection invisibility table, right? Um,
Right.
that relates to very highly intelligent characters or monsters are able to pick up on invisibility.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And if you're, let's say that you're trying to hide in shadows within the vicinity of something with an exceptional sense of smell, like a hellhound or something like that,
yeah.
just use a little bit of logic and be consistent in your rulings. Um, the- what you don't want is, at least in my experience, you don't want a character. First off, you don't want to know. You don't want the player to know whether or not the character is successfully hidden in shadows, right? And that's the point of making a hidden role as the
Hmm.
DM. This is one of those cases where you would always hide your role, and the thief always thinks that he's successful at hiding, moving silently, and
Right.
things that have a hazard associated with them. Uh, um, so there's that, and the idea that you what you don't want to have. I think I figured it out and got back to it. Hang on, but what you don't want to have is an example where the thief actually, or the player of the thief actually thinks that hiding should be successful or whatever, and you hit him with a gotcha where it's like, no, 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 it wouldn't have mattered what the role was. You can't hide in plain sight. Those things should be understood by the DM and the players, and part of that is consistency.
It's
And for
only
the most part, good DMs always do that, right?
right. If you're fair at all times with your players, they'll trust you on these sorts of decisions, and it
Yes.
explained it away too. Explain to him why he's not invisible, and they say, "Oh, I got you. Okay, I understand." Yeah, just arbitrarily saying, "Nope, didn't happen," doesn't really is not really satisfying to your players. Right. Another thing we might want to make note of things like opening locks. Act of picking a lock to be opened can take from 1 to 10 rounds, right? Depending on the complexity of lock. As a rule, most locks will take but 1 to 4 rounds of time to pick. So if you are running away from an encounter, picking a lock to get through a door might not allow you that time to flee that you thought you may have had because it's going to take some time for you to do this. Um, I've noticed that a lot of players think that, hey, I make my pick locks roll and it happens fairly instantaneously. You're muted if you're trying to say something.
No, I apologize, and I should have turned off the camera. My wife just got home, and I was
Oh,
telling
okay.
her the dinner scenario.
Uh, the honeydew stuff is up, right? Silent movement is another one. It's normal exploratory movement, 12 foot per round as a thief uh, creeps up, croodles. I've heard that term before, right? Upon the area or victim or
Brutal.
whatever, do not inform the thief that his or her dice score indicated a lack of success at this attempted stealth. If that is the case, he or she thinks the movement is silent, and the monster or victim will inform the character of his or her misapprehension soon enough, right? Moving silently. Now, there are some items and stuff that you can collect as in the game that would help you be able to move silently, but things happen, right? You're in the dungeon. It's not a squeaky clean, but even if it was a squeaky clean floor, you would definitely be given up by the squeaks your boots make on that floor. but
Right,
right,
right.
but there's always going to be a little grit or something on the floor, a noise or something that may give you away, which would adequately explain failure on the dice roll. Right? It's these aren't things that are automatic. Just because my player's handbook says I can do these things, doesn't mean it's automatic. Doesn't mean it is absolute or universal.
Yeah, yeah. And from
Yeah.
the player's perspective, the wisest thing to do, in really any circumstance, say you just read the player's handbook, you're not familiar with the game to the extent maybe the DM is or the other players, ask your DM for clarification. And a good DM is going to clarify that stuff for you and maintain that ruling across sessions, right?
Sure. Dungeon Delver is picking on Yang. I think we can permit that. Yeah. So
I'll allow it.
yeah, okay, good. Yeah, keep going. Pick back. Yeah, I'll take every target I can get to backstab. Absolutely. Give them plenty of targets to backstab. Right.
Yeah,
Let's
backstab's a particularly fun thing for the thief player, right?
Yeah,
Especially
so
since it
there should be
scales as
some
going up in
opportunities for
level.
him to be able to do it. It is a lot of fun. It's a real. They love it. You know, he
They
should.
love it.
Yeah, give some opportunities for him to be able to do it. Right. But that's the whole part of the game is everybody's having fun. Where else do we want to go to? Um, Hearing noise, right? Pretty straightforward. A thief is just as any other character must take off the helmet or other obstructing headgear in order to press his or ear to the door surface in order to hear beyond. Now, I don't use things like ear seekers or rock grubs or something. I think it's kind of cheap,
Come
but
on.
I could. They're in there,
Yeah.
right? It's in the book. I can use it. But the just having to take your headgear and stuff off is enough of a penalty to it, because if something's on the other side of that door and comes crashing out of it without your helmet on, remember we talked about how many strikes are going at the unprotected head of the character. So, yeah, it's that's kind of what it's there for. Oh, let's see. What do we got here? Thief players so often forget they can backstab with a long sword. Yes. Ever see a fire giant get taken out with a single sword blow? Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, that would be great. Yep.
Yep. Gee, and I know the dungeon that we could probably get that done in. Wouldn't that be any one of the giant series that we might find giants in that we could try to backstab? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of there's a misconception maybe out there too that backstabbing must only be done with something like a dagger or something. No, the thief can use any sword except for a bastard or a two-handed sword, so he could use one of those to do his backstabbing with. And if it's a large creature, wow, you're doing
Yeah.
large 1d12 damage to it times your multiplier. Yeah. How did you one shot the giant? Well, you don't want to know. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Backstab is also the only way to make damage scale with leveled off fighters. What he may be getting at here is, although you have multiple swings you have to do, but a higher level fighter can get multiple attacks in a particular round. So kind of the same thing as 3 times damage if you can make 3 strikes. Right.
True, but there is one area. I mean, when I played my last thief, if your dexterity is sufficient, then by all means, I mean, even if it's really not, 2-weapon fighting is on the table, right?
Yes.
So you can
Do
attack
it.
-2, -4, reaction attacking adjustment, taking -1 for each plus in dexterity, taking -1
Yep.
from that penalty. And
And the
then
thief
if
being
you
a
get
dexterity base is
some,
perfect.
yeah, and if you get some magic weapons, even like a +1 dagger, +1 short sword or whatever, it can mitigate that. And
Well, for your, um, I think we covered it too when we were talking about. I think we did talk about 2-weapon fighting. Your offhand weapon must be a dagger or hand axe, though. But still, a magical one of those would be awesome.
yeah,
It doesn't say which weapon you can backstab with. It just says a backstab. And I would give it to you if you got total surprise on your monster. You would get backstab on both of them because that is your attack routine. That would
exactly.
just
It's
be the
your
way I
attack
would play
routine.
that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think the rules exist to support that
Hey,
when you
well,
think about attack routine versus an individual handed attack.
well, let's thank the Dungeon Delver for stopping by and visiting us peons down here and stuff. Appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll have to get together and do some more discussions. Yeah, he's got his own little stream, so when we're done tonight, if he's still running, hop over on and view his. Climbing walls, I think that's another one that's fairly abused. This is probably the most abused thief function, although hiding in shadows vies for the distinction. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that one. Right?
And
Ability to
Gary's
climb.
not happy here. This
No,
is the
no,
way
he's not.
Gary says he's not happy.
He just straight up put his notes directly from his page right into the book. The ability to climb walls
Yes.
is something which is acquired through training and practice, just as are most other thief functions of thief. The rate at which a vertical or horizontal movement is possible depends on the texture and other conditions of the surface. And I tried copying it out here, cut and paste, and it didn't come out all that well. But there's guidance in there as to how to deal with different types of surfaces stuff when it comes to climbing those walls. Um, be, be sure to check each round of vertical or horizontal movement for a chance of slipping and falling. Surfaces which are inclined inwards move towards greater degrees of difficulty. Right, a non-slippery one being treated as slightly slippery. So if it's inclined and you're trying to climb up that face, increase the difficulty level of it. All right, most dungeon
Yeah, and I
walls.
would say likewise, if
Go ahead.
it's sloped, if it's sloped the away from you, then decrease the difficulty in the same sense, right?
Right.
So if it's back like this, it's going to be much harder. If it's like this, it might even just be
Yep.
normal.
Right.
You know,
Most dungeon walls will fall into the fairly rough to rough category, so it should be fairly easily for them to climb. Some will be non-slippery, but most will be slightly slippery due to dampness and slime growth and stuff. You're inside a dungeon. You know, it's going to have mold and all that kind of stuff, and slime, and not just slime, but just escaped my head. Normal, slippery, natural growth, not necessarily monsters.
right. It might be leaking water through the limestone or the
Sure,
karst or whatever you would call it. Um, and having the presence of slime, it might actually be a little bit better than the alternative, right? Because at least slime shows that it's more of a rough surface, and climbing a sheer surface, I mean that sort of borders on Spider-Man and whatnot, right? So I'll take the mold and the slime and the liquid and all that if it means that I'm getting a rough wall to scale.
right. Read languages, right? The ability assumes that the language is, in fact, one the thief has encountered sometime in the past. Ancient and strange languages, those you, as DM, have previously designated as such. You come across a manuscript in a dungeon that's thousands of years old. The thief probably would never have seen anything like that ever before. Right? Even if the ability to read a language, the thief should be allowed to only get about that percentage of the meaning of what is written as his or her percentage ability to read the tongue in the first place. The rest they will have to guess at. Right? So, hey, I know a few words in this particular language. I can make these ones out on the paper, but I don't know all of them. So we'll have to, you know, interpret what some of these other words may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's generally so read languages, I would think, is more related to their exposure to a number of different languages and communication across social settings,
Sure.
where they can actually start to put together a little bit about how that language relates to other languages, plus their skill deciphering and stuff. Read languages should probably, I mean, maybe it's a little bit more difficult than it should be, but it should probably be looked at as, okay, I know, like, from a historical sense, I know, like, Greek and Hebrew and this kind of thing, and now I'm presented with hieroglyphs, you know.
Yeah.
Or Chinese, and now I'm
Yeah.
presented with hieroglyphs, or the other way around.
But
Right, so they have to piece that together.
even then, if you just because you understand Chinese doesn't mean you can read Korean or Japanese, and they're
Yes.
all those types of characters, right?
Right.
Yeah. Thieves and assassins setting traps are covered in this. Yes, you can set traps. As a matter of fact, I will allow thief characters in my game if they disabled a particular trap. Say they wanted to get inside a room that had a trap on it. They if they didn't damage it in the process or something, they could reset it as a means of guarding that door. Right, and they would have the same chance of resetting that trap as they did from disabling it. Yeah. And it would be a good use of that particular skill because you're gonna every now and then you got to hole up and get a little bit of rest. You know, we got another one dropping in to say hello. Awesome.
Yeah, I guess I don't even have to type. I was just going to say, yeah, enjoy your stream.
Thanks for dropping
Sorry I
by.
had to bail on you. Yeah,
Thanks.
and thanks
Yeah,
for coming by. And if I can get over there, I got a couple things to do after this, but I can get over there. I'll come over and comment.
sure.
Oh, actually,
Well, Yang, I think, out of anybody I
yes.
know, I think Yang is like probably the only one that I'm aware of it recently that studied any of that kind of stuff. You can read Japanese and Old Korean if you can read Japanese, about 75 to 90%. So there would
Yeah, and
be a means of explaining away, hey, this is why I might be able to interpret a lot of this that's on there. It's similar to this other language. And it says it in there too. Um, read up a little bit. Languages which are relatively close to those known by the thief will not incur such a penalty, right? So it's just
right.
different dialect or something or other, even though it may be considered a dialect, it's the same thing. Right? So as far as setting traps, that's the end of what I had on this particular page. Yep, I will allow somebody, a thief or an assassin, to set a trap and to give them the same chances of failure as it would be to disable one. They know how to deal with these things. Why couldn't they set them as well as disable them? Right.
Yeah, yeah, and if I may, that's something that's hardly ever used, and that's probably because find and remove traps is called find and remove traps, but
Mhm.
and most players probably don't. Michael, most players probably don't think of it that way. If you can find a trap and remove a trap, that implies the ability to understand how traps work and therefore set them as well. So I like that, and it's not obvious because it's very seldom that I find as a DM that a thief player ever tries to set a trap.
So Chinese and Korean, not Japanese and Korean. Everybody hated the Japanese, right? So they were not nice to their neighbors for a good percentage of their history.
Indeed.
Hey, John Collins, 2282 here to say hello. Good evening, John. All right. It mentions in here, though, whenever a thief or assassin character decides to set a trap, require him or her to furnish you a simple drawing to illustrate how the trap will function. If the chance to successfully set the trap results in failure, there's a chance of causing injury to the trap setter. Yeah, I've pinched a finger or two in a trap before. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Snares and
that's
stuff.
and that's really interesting too, is because it calls upon the player to use his imagination. Assume the role of the thief, assume the character's role within the world, and then you use your knowledge to sort of interpret how that trap might be created and demonstrate it to the DM. When most DMs, when they create traps, or at least I like to think so, they create traps in such a way that they're going to be able to explain to the thief that disarms it or finds it how the mechanism works. Put the onus for that on the player if they're playing a thief and they want to set traps too, I would say.
Right. On the same token, like that, if I have a set trap in a room, it's on me to kind of not a die roll here, defeat this trap. Well, what is the trap? So that if the I would have to come up with a simple plan, simple diagram and stuff, so that if the thief himself wanted to reuse that trap, he's got a description of what it was and what it does, so he could tell me how he would reset it, kind of thing. So that's on me to explain away how all my traps and stuff work, not just to say it's just a die roll, you take damage. There's more to it than just that. I got to use my creativity as well, right? Would you allow a thief to
Absolutely.
find, disarm, and then remove and take a trap with them? Yes, that depends on the trap. Yeah,
It depends on the trap. Agreed.
right. A simple lock on a chest, absolutely, right? Disarm so it doesn't poke you in the finger with a poison needle, right? Make it
Yeah,
render it
or a
safe.
closing trap,
Or,
a
yeah,
teeth
sure,
trap, like
like
a bear
a
trap,
bear
animal
trap or
trap,
something. Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes. So there we go. As far as setting traps and stuff to go, we've been on about an hour. I'm good to continue longer if you want to go for some other things.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. Anything in particular? The audience. I'll just have to take a really short break. I need to check on the food in the kitchen. If you've got something, oh yeah, yeah, this is a good one right here because we've just recently talked about mapping and
Right.
such in a prior stream. It might have even been the
I've
last
got
one.
some more
And
on mapping and stuff too. Actually, well, why don't we start with this? Which one page is that? First dungeon adventure. When we left off with the player's handbook, we left
oh
off with
yeah,
the player's handbook explaining the dungeon adventure to the player. Here is Gary Gygax explaining the dungeon adventure to the dungeon master and what his role and stuff is going to be in it. Right? So we'll start down there at the bottom of page 96 if you want to follow along at home. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. I'll read this out while you take off. Assume that you have
yeah.
assembled
Thanks.
a
I'll be
group.
right back.
Yeah, no problem. Assume that you have assembled a group of players. Each has created a character, determined his or her race and profession, spent some time carefully equipping these neophyte adventurers with everything that the limited funds available could purchase. Your participants are now eagerly awaiting instructions from you as to how to find the place they are to seek their fortunes in. You inform that there is a rumor that in the village, that something strange and terrible lurks in the abandoned monastery not far from the place. Ooh, abandoned monastery, awesome. Excellent. I have a couple of those in my game world. In fact, one of the braver villagers will serve as a guide if they wish to explore the ruins. Awesome. This seemingly innocent guide might be nothing more than he seems, or possibly an agent of some good or evil power, or a thief in disguise, or just about anything else. In this case, however, let it be a thief for reasons you will discover soon. The party readily agrees, uh, oh, and so the adventure begins. Now, um, if any of you are aware out there, B2, Keep on the Borderlands, there is a cleric in the Keep on the Borderlands who is more than happy to help you go to the Caves of Chaos. Maybe too eager to help you go to the Caves of Chaos. And it's an excellent dungeon that puts this particular piece into play. In fact, it's a really great dungeon altogether. I've got very few complaints to it. My only complaints are the Caves of Chaos is just too concentrated a place. Otherwise, it is really great. You inform them that after about a 2 mile trek along I got my speaker, my camera in the way. Trek along a seldom used road, they come to the edge of a fen. Ooh. Aren't there trolls in fens? Aye. A narrow causeway leads out to a low mound upon which stands the walls and buildings of the deserted monastery. One of the players inquires if the mound appears to be traveled, and you inform the party that only a very faint path is discernible, as if any traffic is light and infrequent. Right? You're describing the mystery and the loneliness and stuff of this particular place out here, that it is out of the way. You're setting the stage for them with your description. All right. Somewhat reassured, another player asks if anything else is apparent. Right. Your players should be interacting with you on your descriptions and stuff, asking for clarification. And you should go ahead and give them that sort of thing as you're moving through. Right. Feed them some information. Right. But if it is a very hazardous place, feed them that information that will give them the impression that it's also a hazardous place as well. Don't spring things or surprise them on them, telegraph stuff to give them some options. If they then ignore it, well, they deserve whatever they get. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. If the leading member of the group, whether appointed or self-selected, it makes no difference. I have run in groups of players where everybody decides, okay, Joe Schmo, you're going to be the party leader. And I've played with groups that Joe Schmo says, hey, guys, I'm going to be the leader. And no input from anybody else whatsoever, just whatever. And in both cases, it worked just fine. It worked just fine.
Yeah.
You have somebody that
Same.
sets the party direction. The caller and stuff. That's another word for it too. That sets the party direction, and everybody discusses their actions and their plans and stuff with that person. That person relays all that to the dungeon master. That keeps a lot of confusion down.
Yeah, and particularly, and that's something that's missed or lost in translation as you get into later versions of D and
Mhm.
D and stuff, along with the concept of the mapper and everybody having to move slow. Later editions kind of gloss over or glaze over that or hand wave it or whatever you would say, but uh, just as in old school, just as the mapper was a critical component of the party to avoid things like being lost and being able to trace your way back out and all that kind of stuff. The collar was also very important. Now, not a lot of people use them, but there are ways you can use that
Yep.
as a player if everybody's sort of on the same page. And usually it will happen within games with old school players, but I think it's something that should be adopted for most role playing games because it streamlines things incredibly. That's not to say that the caller is going to call out what everybody does during combat, because he can't possibly know that. But in terms of if you come into a strange room, having somebody who's the caller say, okay, well, the thief's going to go over here. The fighters are going to head off this area over here. Ranger's going to scout around the room, and the magic user is going to get ready to, who knows, detect magic or whatever he does, right?
Sure.
And you don't even have to get as involved in that, because players like to play their characters, but it's also nice to be organized and formulaic in your approach to the dungeon delve.
Oh, cool. So it looks like Yang is using Caller again in his particular game, sequel to Empire of the Undying Sun. Yeah.
It's a great concept.
Yeah. And if anybody is unaware, Yang is producing some materials of his own. Go visit his channel, get all the information about his stuff as you would like.
Yes, and he's a very good guy too, despite his misunderstanding of how Oriental languages relate to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's exceeding intense animosity towards small legendary creatures from Ireland as well, right?
Hey, he didn't get me pot of gold, I assume.
No, he ran off with a magical dagger. Yeah.
Yeah, just suck it up and have some lucky charms, Yang. All will be well.
Yes. All right. So the basics of this is running things out. Now, the guide is an important piece here too, because I've seen this run in a lot of games as well. The so-called guide, the thief, is a third level non-player character, right? You placed him in the village and gave the reason for his being there as a desire for the huge fire opal, which is in the abbot of the place is said to have hidden when the monastery was under siege. The fellow died, according to legend, before revealing it to anyone. So somewhere within the ruins lies a fortune. So the thief is there to somehow or another gain that. And it explains, it goes a little more detail in that paragraph as to what that's about. But this is not a DMPC. This isn't the dungeon master running a player character in the game. This is a
Yes.
non-player character that has limited function and interaction with the rest of the group. I am a I am pretty sure that would probably get me demonetized. I'm just
I'm pretty sure it's directed at me too, which is fine.
right. So, and I've seen this in a lot of games where the DM they want to play too. Sure, I understand. But they bring along their own player character to run with the group that somehow or another just never seems to work right. That he always gets away with some of the weirdest stuff, and then and runs off with the treasure and all that stuff outside what the player characters and stuff should allow, and it can cause some hazards. Somehow or another, he seems to escape damage and all that sort of things. And I've seen that a number of times. The dungeon master, you're there to just set up the stage, set the opposition forces in motion, and referee the whole deal. If you want to play a character, find a group that will let you play a character, right? Don't run one in your own game. Yeah.
Right. Like in this example, this particular NPC it reminds me of. You would have seen you would have seen a couple of examples of this in Indiana Jones movies or something like that, or even pulp stories in particular. But think about even in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the guy guides Indy, and he obviously has his own devices and his own little background story. And the background story is short and sweet, and then he may end up betraying you or whatever. The NPC, in other words, from my perspective, doesn't need to exist only. Don't box yourself into having NPCs that exist only for the benefit of the player characters. It's just as
Right.
well to have one that exists for their detriment and to play a little bit of trickery.
We got Gonzalo here dropping in to join us too. Yep. What has he got to say here as well? I can represent an NPC party member without any ego and often do, for they're essential for moving the story forward, sometimes not being invulnerable. Right? Sometimes the fact that NPC died set some other things in motion and stuff too. You don't bring an NPC along because there's this huge magic gem in that particular dungeon and you don't want the players to get it. You're just teasing them with it. And if they do get it, your NPC now steals it so they can't have your prized item out of your dungeon. As a dungeon master, you should be as impartial as possible to the way things are playing. Yeah, like Dungeon
Yes.
Master D says here, there is a difference between being an NPC and the DM's character. There's a big difference.
Yeah, huge. And one other thing that I wanted to mention on that is that sometimes it will be of necessity to play an NPC that's part of the party, depending on how the DM wants to run his henchmen. Right. So once you hire henchmen, those are, even though they get like half experience and that sort of thing, and whatever treasure split has been decided, that's the closest thing that you're going to get to a PC. And some DMs may wish to run all the henchmen themselves. Some of them may delegate out the henchmen to the players, and that kind of thing. But that's much different than the NPC that we're talking about in this particular adventure, because they've been hired by the characters, and how you treat them is going to affect their morale, regardless of whether it's being controlled by the player. You would hope the player would play that poor morale, or whether it's controlled by the DM. And you may wish to hand off the control of henchmen if you're talking about 6, 7, 8 of them or whatever. That's a lot for the DM to deal with.
If you're going to have 100,
Yes. Yes, and you're going to play them correctly. None of this, this henchman helps this particular guy because it happens to be my henchman, even though my character treats him like crap. Right?
Right.
You have to be mature enough to actually do or assume the role of the henchman before I'm going to hand it off.
And all 100 different personalities too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does beat the heck out of a character playing 2 PCs and then ending up role playing with themselves. Right. Which I've seen plenty of times. Well, the cleric's going to heal. My cleric is going to heal my paladin because that's what my cleric would do. And it's like, no, you're doing that because that's your other PC.
Ooh, well, I would tend to argue a little bit with this. If I hire a henchman, you own them. Well, they answer to me yes to a certain point, but you need to treat them well for them to give you
right
and do what you're telling them to do. Right.
Yeah, otherwise they're pulling a Julius Caesar on you.
Gonzalo's an experienced dungeon master. He knows exactly what we're talking about. He's just trying to burst our bubble a little bit. Yeah.
Gonzalo, there's Bartrol.
Yeah. It's hard to play 2 NPCs that hate each other at the same time. Certain degree, yeah. Unless you're used to arguing with yourself, and then it's kind of an extension,
Yes, exactly.
With myself, yeah, exactly. So one of the main topics I wanted to pull out of this was movement and searching, right? You must make some arbitrary decisions regarding the time expended in activities which are not strictly movement. Traveling along a corridor and mapping its length takes 1 turn per 90 foot, assuming a base move of 9 inches, right? So that's kind of straightforward. How long does it take to move along but a short section of passage? Open door, enter the room beyond, and search it. Such variables as passage length, condition of the portal, lock, stuck, or normal, the size of the room beyond, and thoroughness of the search make an absolute determination of the time nearly impossible, right? So you'll have to wing some of these things. There are many variations of player character activity: looking for signs of use of the corridor, listening for noise, looking for traps, inspection of walls, secret doors, etc., all of which compound the need for an arbitrary handling of time. If a few fixed references are used, the task becomes a good deal easier, however. Therefore, the following suggestions are offered. Door, searching for traps should take a round. Door, listening for noise should take the round. Now, remember, a round is a whole minute, but in the context of this, it, if you're putting your ear to the door, unless there's something banging on the other side of the door right away, it's going to take some time to discern out natural noises in your area over that. Okay. A room, mapping and or casually examining a 20 by 20 area, 1 turn, 10 minutes, right? Room thoroughly searching after initial examination, right? 1 turn. This assumes that, in fact, the area has items which can be checked for: traps, examined, content search, hidden compartments looked for, and so on. If there are many containers and much furniture in the area, the time might actually be double that shown. If the place has nothing but some odds and ends, then a casual examination will discover if all there is to know about the place. Sort of short of a lack of check for secret doors. Secret doors should always take a certain length of time, no matter what. And a
Yes.
thorough search is contraindicated, right? Oh man, this room seems to be empty. Okay, let's make a cursory search for a secret door or something, and then move on. A secret door, checking for by simple tapping of floor or wall, 10 by 10 area, takes a round, a minute, right? A thorough examination for means to open by 10 by 10 area, 1 turn, right? That's just a 10 by 10 area. If you've got, like they mentioned earlier, your 20-foot by 20-foot room, right? That is 4 10-foot areas you need to search. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And if did you have something else to add right there,
No,
or can I just
go for
step
it.
in? Yeah, a couple of things. And I'll start with the secret door thing. That might be, to go back to the abuse things. The elf having a chance of happening upon a secret door or whatever. From my perspective, that means that the party is in search mode, right? The concept where a player might tell you, okay, yeah, I'm going to have my elf walk around the room real quick. I've got a 1 in 6 chance or 2 in 6 chance or whatever. I'm going to have him walk around the room real quick and see if he picks up on any secret doors. If you're not in search and exploration mode, meaning that basically I equate the elves or whomever's ability to notice a secret door to be the same type of thing as 1 round per. He just happens to have a chance at actually doing that in a compressed time scale. And then
Right.
if that made any sense at all. And then the
Yeah,
other
well,
thing
like it says in
is,
the book, a casual search, just like merely walking by. That is not running
yes,
by because the wolf pack is chasing you. That is
exactly.
just a casual look. Hey, wait a minute, that's something look odd right over there, because they just noticed these things right out. Right.
Right. It depends on if your time scale is zoomed in with
Mm-hmm.
the party moving slowly and mapping and exploring and searching for all these types of things. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I can't remember which stream that we talked about it in, but the DMG is real good. When Gygax says things like this, these are the areas that you, as the dungeon master, that he feels are basically your responsibility. When he says the following is offered, uh, it's a suggestion. If it offends your sensibilities, then maybe this. Optionally, he chooses all those words, or the editor did, or whatever, in this manuscript to say, hey, these are the things that you can change as a DM. I'm just giving you some options on it without actually, not playing AD&D, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, people can ignore whatever they want. But I like to focus on, if I'm going to make any modifications to any of the rules or anything like that, I like to focus on the areas where it's been offered that there's an optional way to deal with this, or maybe, it's necessary for you to fill it in based on how your world works.
All right, here's a good question about um, henchmen and charisma. We'll backpedal a little bit on that. Yes, Charisma does play
Big
into
time,
rules
too.
around henchmen and such in 1E. Not only does it influence your reaction rolls with non-player characters and such, your charisma determines the number of henchmen and hirelings that you can have as well. That's not the same as followers. That's a little bit different, right? These are henchmen and hirelings. So if you're got a low or average charisma, maybe 2 or 3, you got a high charisma, you can get a few more. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it does. It matters quite a lot in the
Yes.
for henchmen and stuff. And it also matters a lot for the loyalty and stuff of them as well, right? A higher charisma, you're able to get them to be a little more loyal.
Yes, indeed. And in a game where you are going to use henchmen or end up in a level where you have followers and stuff like that, a charisma becomes not a dump stat, right? If you're going to use henchmen to their maximum effectiveness, which increases the effectiveness of your adventuring group through the dungeon delve or overland travel or whatever you're doing, it's actually very important. And I got that. I went ahead and went to that table. So it was I think it was Anthony Huso from his website, which I've mentioned before, who pointed out something that Gygax did often, which was use a single attribute or role in a couple of different ways. And he does that here, right? This is what I was immediately reminded of. So like a 15 charisma, 7 maximum henchmen for that individual character. Okay.
Right.
And then he has a loyalty base of plus 15%. So that means these guys are 15% more loyal at the base level. And then he also has a 15% reaction adjustment bonus for those cases where a morale check needs to be made for that individual henchman, right? And it scales big time to where if you've got like an 18, you've got a plus 40% loyalty base, and that's huge. Whereas if you have a 9 or even up to a 13, it's normal. So
Right.
18 charisma is a huge deal. And charisma is a huge deal for henchmen, and henchmen are foundational to old school play, as we pointed out.
All right. And just because you got an 18 charisma doesn't mean you automatically seduce the princess.
Yes. Because you might think you have an 18 charisma, like me, for example, and then you discover that it's actually like a 7.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, that one decision and change created the idea of a dump stat, and which proliferated for years. Yes, and charisma really didn't become important again until you had classes that relied on it, like the warlock, right? That it was.
Yeah, and if you take this away, you're taking away henchmen, and henchmen are sort of the foundation. You read old school adventuring stories or actually played in those games, because sometimes you might not, sometimes you might not have 6, 8 guys, AD&D modules. There'll be like 7 to 9 characters, 4th to 6th level, who actually playing AD&D at that time had 7 to 9 friends. Period. You don't. So,
Well, I had 7 to 9 friends. 3 of them were imaginary.
Right. Yeah. So you're like Gonzalo. You own them.
Detection of unusual circumstances, traps, and hearing noises, right? Regardless of the means, it takes effort and concentration to perform any of these activities. A gnome, for instance, must remain relatively quiet and concentrate for a turn to detect facts about an underground setting. Likewise, a dwarf must work at it, right? He knows construction tricks and stuff like that. An elf doesn't detect secret doors 16 and 2/3% of the time by merely passing them unless he or she is actually concentrating on the act, right?
Fact, I did not know that was there when I mentioned it.
Right.
But that's what a common sense reading and interpretation of these rules will do for you.
Right. Here to sum it all up, don't give the players a free lunch. Exactly. Tell them what they see, allow them to draw their own conclusions, and initiate whatever activity they desire. You're the source of their put
I'm working
a
on this.
timekeeper and the motivator, not all connected with them, that's sufficient to keep you busy, rest assured. Oh, hey. So we got Junior hopping in here to bomb the stream.
Yeah.
All right. He didn't bring you a ferret this time to gnaw on you while you're sitting there?
No, he didn't. He's telling me, oh, meatloaf.
Oh, did he eat dinner
It's
then?
still
And you didn't
cooking.
get any?
No, he wants it all of a sudden. He's
I,
never
I,
eaten meatloaf before, but now he wants to try it.
oh, awesome. Meatloaf is great.
It is.
Assume, let's see, all of my real friends were cultivated through gaming, sure, right? I wasn't even friends really with most of the people I played D&D with, but none of that mattered when it came time.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Man, I
that's
had
right.
plenty of people I played with I didn't like.
Yeah,
It's
but that
not like
wasn't the point.
fishing. I'm not going fishing with somebody I want to throw off the boat, but I'll play D&D with somebody I
Depends on
want to
what you're
throw off the
fishing for.
map. Yeah.
Yeah. I love this paragraph, and I play by it all the time. Assume that your players are continuously wasting time, thus making the so-called adventure drag out into a boring session of dice rolling and delay if they are checking endlessly for traps and listening at every door. Boy, I know a party that likes to do a couple of parties that like to do that, right? If this persists despite
Yes.
the obvious displeasure you express, the requirement that helmets be doffed and mail coifs be removed to listen to the door and then be carefully replaced, the warnings about ear seekers and frequent checking for
Yeah.
wandering monsters, QV, there's something about wandering monsters in here too, and we'll cover it. Then you will have to take more direct part in things, mocking their overcautious behavior as near cowardice, rolling huge. I do that. If you haven't noticed, I mock player characters, right? Rolling huge handfuls of dice and telling them that the results are negative,
Right.
right? Um, Statements to the effect that you detect nothing and nothing has detected you so far might suffice. If the problem should continue, then rooms full with silent monsters will turn the tide. That is the stuff of later adventures. Right?
Yeah,
And that's
I
one thing.
think
If they're constantly dithering, then they're dithering in the dungeon too, and take that into account, right?
right, and I think that's a big part of the popularity, and I've said such
Yeah.
before of something like Shadow Dark, which tries to put sort of the horror back into the role playing experience. But if you were playing it the way Gary told you to from the very beginning, you were doing that already,
Right.
right?
Oh, but I have
The
dark vision.
dungeon, yeah, yeah. The idea isn't that the dungeon's some sort of
Yeah.
fun house where you're striving for 100% completion rate. Uh, it should be a dangerous place, and the more time you're spending, a couple of things happen. You spend more time, then you're not achieving the character's objectives. But if you spend more time, you're also not achieving the player's objectives, right? Which
Mhm.
is progress.
Right.
Because you want to keep the game moving, and players should work along with the DM to keep the game moving. I don't mind opening a door without listening to see or even checking for traps or whatever, because that's part of moving the game forward. If the circumstances warrant, yes, I will open that door. And players need to be willing to take those risks.
Yeah. The easiest way to find traps on a trapped door is to open the door.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe you'll get your save. Yeah.
Right.
And here's another thing that I've noticed that players seem to get annoyed at. As a rule of thumb, all doors are hard to open and hard to keep closed or open for player characters, while inhabitants of the dungeon find little difficulty in these regards. Right? This is to keep things moving, right? Regardless of how a
Right.
door opens, it is as usual that its weight and condition require that force be used to swiftly operate it. This is represented by the roll of a d6 for each person involved in pushing, pulling, lifting, sliding, or whatever. A roll of 1 or 2 typically indicates success. Anything above indicates door still remains unopened. Right? See the player's handbook character abilities. Strength. Right? Very heavy doors might reduce chances by half. Locked doors might only open if 2 or even 3 simultaneous ones are rolled. You can force a door. Right? Most doors are about 8 foot wide, and this allows up to 3 characters to attempt the opening. If you remember, our mapping is a 10-foot by 10-foot square panel. So a good percentage of that 10-foot panel on that wall is that 8-foot door. Just the way that he intended for his dungeon stuff to run. A door of 3 foot or less width allows but a single character to make an attempt. If a wooden door is always metal bound naturally or broken down by axes and the like, it will take some time. A full turn is usual, 10 minutes, right? And require at least 3 checks to see if nearby and or wandering monsters attracted by the noise. Doors can also be blasted away by fireballs and other spells, for example, which create a lot of noise. There's also a spell which creates a noise that's heard up to 300 yards away or whatever it is. The knock spell. This will not likely to draw monsters to the vicinity immediately, right? Any such destruction will, however, attract attention of all passing creatures and possibly cause future problems. Intelligent dungeon inhabitants will certainly make efforts to repair damage if it is in their interest to do so. Finally, metal doors, usually locked, will be very difficult to open, requiring a knock spell or similar means to get most of the time. Doors. I've noticed players are really irritated at having to roll to open doors. Right? It's a door. Well, it's also in a dungeon. It's also probably very seldom used. So it's probably waterlogged, swollen shut, or into the frame or something like this. So unless you're running through a well-maintained building, these things should be a little bit tough. And it should be one of your, for lack of a better word, a time waster, a delay or something. If you're on a time limit to get through, these things eat up some of that time and you avoid unnecessary doors.
Right. Right. And doors, it's also mentioned first thing in the paragraph, and I'll put that in the recommendations category for myself at least, is as a rule of thumb, right? So basically, if you don't have look at it like some sort of mega dungeon or whatever, where maybe it doesn't necessarily make sense why certain creatures are in certain locations. Maybe there's some magical or supernatural effect over said dungeon, or maybe it's on another plane or whatever. This is a rule of thumb that I feel that DMs can modify however they want without affecting the mechanics of the game or unduly creating some sort of unbalanced situation, which is one of the things I like with AD&D, and it's sort of freedom, and it's kind of wide open perimeter within which everybody can operate, right? So I don't always require door opens. It's circumstantial, but to each their own, and I like it either way. As a player, because I'll just bust it open.
I kind of like that rule to a certain degree, that if everything is tough, it doesn't telegraph something to the player characters. Hey, all these other doors were easy to open. This one's tough. This must be where the treasure is. Right?
Right.
It gives away, that would give away too much.
Right.
The lack of exploration rounds makes opening doors seem useless. If you run the risk of having a wandering patrol find you while the thief opens the door, it becomes a lot more significant. Right. So again, the way he laid things out when we were talking about it from the player's handbook perspective is you have a plan, what you want to go in and want to get after, right? And you beat feet there as quickly as you can, and you avoid anything that's unnecessary. And here's guidance on the dungeon master side of how to telegraph to your players, the time wasting, the unnecessary aspects of some of these things, or not their plan.
The urgency of exploration, and some doors, right? Like you said, great old ones, right? Some doors, they don't relate specifically to your objective at that time. Save them for your next entrance into the dungeon, right? Get to your objective, assuming that you've been able to kind of figure out what that is, if it's not laid out for you, and take those doors. Retreat from the dungeon, come back in, so I think this is basically cautioning against, or trying to mitigate against, okay, you come into a 20-foot room and there's the door you came in, and there's doors equal distant to the north, the west, and the east, and then the players are like, okay, we're going to open every single one of them, take stock of what's through each passage, basically not make a decision, right?
Right. This is definitely a good point by Gonzalo, and as you and I have discussed Dooms, and we've had questions about it before, we will get together and talk about good dungeon design and stuff. It
Yeah.
says, I know this is not popular, but I've mapped out population of any ruins. I don't like the term dungeon. Okay, cool. Whatever you want to call it. And for
Yeah.
the most part,
Same
as
thing.
they die, they don't get replenished by a Minecraft monster generator. Agreed. Right? But on the same token, nature abhors a vacuum. Something else is going to end up moving in there eventually. If you leave it alone long enough, you'll come back and something else will be there. Right? It isn't going to be, okay, we just bumped off 30 skeletons in this room, come back 2 weeks later, and there's 30 skeletons in there again. That's kind of crazy. Right? But something else having the chance to move in and make that now its lair should be a part of the possibility. Right?
Yeah,
Depends
for
on
sure.
what's in your ruins and stuff too. This is an
Yeah, yeah.
excellent point by Gonzalo. Yeah.
It really is, and a lot of people sort of kind of neglect that and just make it kind of nonsensical. But on the other hand, think about like insects or reptiles or whatever. There might be natural populations of these things that are in rivalry, and the one next up in line, the beta of the species or whatever,
Mhm.
sees the alpha male get taken out and then moves into its lair. It really depends on your setting and how much magic or supernatural stuff is
Sure.
associated with the ruin.
I like the idea of factions and stuff too. If you have a population
Yeah,
that's in there, is there a rival population on the other side of the dungeon? Are they vying for control of it? If you helped one side out by cleaning out a few rooms of occupants, they're going to move in now. You know, so there's some options and stuff in there for the dungeon master to explain why there's now new creatures in that room. It just needs to kind of make sense as to why they would end up being there, right?
right.
As far as unopened doors and stuff goes, I have parties that leave the dungeon. Okay, we made it down to the third floor. Let's go back up and heal up and stuff. And then let's come back to the dungeon, instead of trying to find the fastest way right back to where they left off, they go explore all the rooms they've explored again because now the doors are all closed. Right? They go back to the rooms that they've already been in. Um, I don't have treasures in my dungeons that magically move from room to room. If you didn't find what you're looking for in room A, when you get to room Z and come back again, you don't have to stop at room A again to figure out if it's not there any still, right?
Right.
That's delaying your objective, right? That's
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Concealed doors. These are doors which are hidden in some way, behind a curtain, covered with plaster, trapdoor under rug, etc. They differ from a secret door in that once their concealment is uncovered, they are obviously doors, right? That makes it easy.
And that's something that's also dropped off in later things. I mean, I don't recall hearing after second edition sort of a gamification of concealed doors versus secret doors. Um, I mean, I don't. Were there any concealed doors in later editions separated from the concept of secret door? Or was it like a? I don't know.
I don't remember. I'd have to reread some of those Dungeon Masters guys, see if they explain that kind of stuff a little bit better. Secret doors are a little different. These are portals which are made to appear to be a normal part of the surface they are in. They can possibly be sensed or detected by characters who are actively concentrating such activity, or their possible location may be discovered by tapping. Through the hollow place could be another passage or room beyond, which has no portal in the hollow sounding surface, right? You don't have, not all your walls are 30, 40 foot thick. Some of them are pretty thin, right? Discovery does not mean that access to the door mechanism has been discovered. However, checking requires a very thorough examination of possible secret door area, right? You may use either of the two methods to allow discovery of the mechanism which operates the portal, right? You may designate probability by a linear curve, typically with a d6. Thus, a secret door is discovered 1 and 6 by any non-elf, 2 and 6 by an elf or half-elven characters, and each character being allowed to roll each turn if checking a 10 by 10 area. This also allows you to have some secret doors more difficult to discover, the linear curve being a d8 or a d10. You may have the discovery of the existence of the secret door enable the player characters to attempt to operate it by actual manipulation, i.e., the players concerned give instructions to how they will have their characters attempt to make it function. Turn the wall sconk, slide it left, press a small protrusion, see if it pivots, pull the chain. I like that. This is a secret door. What are you doing to figure out how it works? You're not just rolling a
Right.
die. Okay, what does my intuition tell me? I got a nat 20. I know how it works automatically. That's not the way it should work, right? Let them, give
No.
them have them exercise their imagination as to what this door might possibly be. What are you looking for to try and engage it to open it?
Yeah, it's very similar with to say, for example, find and remove traps, right?
Hmm.
You found it, okay. I'm not going to have you're going to need to explain to me. You found it. I kind of explained to you what it is, and then you explain to me how your character is going to go about disarming that, right? And who knows? Maybe I'll give you a bonus to the roll or not or whatever. Um, but secret doors kind of operate the same way. Just because you find it doesn't mean you know how to open it naturally. And this also goes into further sort of codifying that even if the secret door can be sensed, as said before, they can possibly be sensed or detected by characters concentrating on such activity. It kind of takes away the idea that the elf can just skirt the perimeter and automatically pick stuff up. And even if he could, some manner of understanding the mechanism by which said door is opened is going to be necessary, which is still going to require a search either from the elf PC or another PC. And, obviously the mechanics associated here in 1 and 2 lay that all out for the DM.
Sure. And the rest of this section is several pages of describing how all this stuff plays out. It's an excellent section to read if you're a new dungeon master as to how a game kind of ran. So there's several
Yeah,
pages of that going into to kind of highlight all these points and stuff that he makes here. One of the things that you and I had mentioned was about becoming lost. Right. This was
yes.
basically as far as in the outdoors, right? Becoming lost for movement in the outdoors. This should always be a possibility that you get lost, even with a ranger or something. The chances are very, very slim, but you should always have a chance of becoming lost. Now, if you're following a road, chances are you're not going to get lost. If you're following a river, chances are you're not going to get lost. But you want to head straight through those woods to get to the other side because the objective is somewhere on the other side. There should be a chance that you get lost in those woods. And this particular section, Dungeon Master's Guide, page 49, explains a lot of that stuff. All right, it says, as mentioned previously, there's movement rates, right? Have been given elsewhere. The rate is assumed the party from 1 to 100 creatures are concerned. If more than 100 are in the party, reduce movement rate by 1 mile per day for each additional 100 fraction thereof. So your armies are on the march, going to have a reduction in their movement. Any party not guided by creatures knowledgeable of the countryside to which the party is moving, or which is not following a well-defined course, river, road, or the like, or which is not using a well-drawn and correct map, might become lost. It's determined prior to the commencement of the day's movement. Determination is based on the terrain. So at the beginning of the day's movement, Dungeon Master rolls up and says, "You're lost." Now, you move in that lost direction for the entire day's travel, right? Which makes finding your way back that much more difficult. It gives you the chances of becoming lost here, the direction that you get lost and that you're traveling, right? Find the direction of movement of the party's lost. It rolls, right? Direction lost movement is illustrated below. It gives you a nice little hex map for figuring out things, um, which direction and stuff that you go lost in. And they also give you procedures here. As soon as the die roll indicates the party's lost, determine the direction. If it is into a space which has previously been traveled over and mapped by the party, then they will recognize that they have become lost. Hey, wait a minute. We've been in these mountains. Here's that tree that we noted earlier, right? The one with the three notches in it, so and stuff. let's see, what is it? I think it's fairly to say that most of the time your basic 1E party was a small army. Yes, it kind of was to a certain degree. If you wanted to stay alive, you got henchmen and
Yes.
hirelings and stuff out there with you to help do some things. You know, manage your baggage train, manage your wagons. Protect the magic users, things like this. As your party grew in levels, the requirement for henchmen and hirelings became less, but it didn't ever really actually went away.
Right. Right.
Viva back got a check
And
from you
and that
first.
was again a foundational concept of the game and old school gaming in general. And maybe it's because of its real close proximity to wargaming. But it
Yeah,
was always assumed that the dungeon was this very dangerous place that only the hardiest among us would even dare go into, and they wouldn't go lightly.
sure.
There's not feats, there's not things like critical hits that are going to help out the party. There's not these types of things that make it in any way sort of a walk in the park or easy.
Balanced encounters where the all the monsters we fight are exactly of our level. They match
Right, right.
challenge rating and stuff like this. The game should be it's just the equal chance for you encountering something that is a good challenge for you, but beatable. There's also one that is an easy fight to happen. They may run off a bunch of kobolds or something, right? And then you're trying to chase them across the countryside, or you come across something that is definitely clearly more powerful than you are. You need to decide, okay, we're the ones that need to run this time, right? We need to evade them. And that's covered in here too. Evasion and pursuit. I've got some of that marked as well, right? So common
Right.
concepts of the original game that kind of got lost in newer
They
versions and
have.
stuff.
They've gotten lost. It's almost like I'm likening it now, and I apologize if I've said this before, but a photocopy of a photocopy, right? You end up losing a little bit of resolution over time, and in terms of or in order for things to be a little more streamlined,
Hmm.
and you know, like to me, the ideal version of the game would be somewhere. It would fit somewhere between all of the spirit of 1E still existing while having some of the flexibility of a more modern system. And that's what most of the stuff I work on for my own poorly failing publishing endeavors seeks to do, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I love these procedures for lost parties and stuff because
Yeah.
you could continue to get further and further lost without finding the way out.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think there's a dungeon version of this, but you could sort of build that out.
No, with the fact that the dungeon is fairly well laid out, as long as you're not running, you should be able to map and kind of sort things out. Now, to
As long as you're
compound
mapping.
that, you could include things in your dungeon like shifting passages and stuff
Yeah.
like this. You move through the area, 10 minutes after you move through it, this wall moves over here, cuts off this passage, but opens up another one, which would make your maps now useless because they don't look the same anymore. And you may think you're lost because the tunnels and stuff look a little bit different, right? And we
Right.
talked about this the other day with how, and with my favorite monster, the gelatinous cube, how players like to like strings or chalk marks on the walls and stuff like this, and to ways to prevent themselves from getting lost in such type of dungeon. But a clever dungeon master will have um, ways of defeating the players' mapping abilities and stuff in those dungeons because they would, natural creatures are in there, right?
Yeah, and I think we even showed it on stream. I think it's from the player's handbook where the adventurer is walking down the hall
And they got
this
the
way,
troll is coiling up
and
the
they got
string
the
as he
troll.
goes through.
Yeah, the player's letting
Exactly.
out a string, and the
What is
troll's
this lead?
picking it
What is
up
this
behind
string
him.
lead to? Hey, look at this! I'm
Yeah,
sticking.
right, right. Like you leave breadcrumbs, well, you might attract giant rats. So it's best to keep them out, my man.
Oh yes, giant rats, the bane of any low-level character. Yeah,
Oh, they're horrible.
yeah,
Them and Sturges. Sturges are brutal.
sure. Now, they describe in here rest as well. Movement rates are postulated on sufficiently daily rest. Right now, standard rest, you move for 50 minutes and you rest for 10. Right, that's standard movement and stuff as far as things go. That kind of thing never changes. But they also cover things like force movement. If you're trying to move through somewhere in a hurry, they give you some rules and stuff here how to handle force movement, which would then give you fatigue and stuff like this that builds into it. Now, they don't cover anything specifically on what happens to your character if they become fatigued and don't rest. Like, what are their how does it affect fighting or something like that if they get ambushed or something out there? Um, but those would be things that the dungeon master would come up with and be fair about it. Right?
Yeah, being fair about it is key.
Yeah. And on top of that, we were talking about pursuit and evasion in the outdoor settings is in here, right? Oh, here you go. At the bottom of this one is note no rules for exhaustion and fatigue are given here because of the tremendous number of variables, including the stamina of the characters and creatures involved. Thus, characters mounted on horses have gradually slowing movement, but this is not a factor unless pursuing creatures tire more or less rapidly than do the mounts. You must judge these factors in a case continuing pursuit. Fatigue merely slows movement and reduces combat effectiveness. Exhaustion will generally require a day of complete rest to restore the exhausted creatures. Always bear in mind that humans inured to the continuous running, for example, can do so for hours without noticeable fatigue. I.e., those such as the Apache Indians, Zulu warriors, etc., do not base your judgment on the typical modern specimen. Okay. Um, to give a good example, and one that I'm very familiar with, the Marine Corps combat readiness exercise, part of that is a 30-mile hike with all our gear within 8 hours. We got to make those 30 miles in 8 hours and still be in fighting condition at the end of those hours. So we train for that sort of thing heavily, right? Wouldn't that be similar to your typical fighter character, right? Having that level of endurance and stuff, right? Because that's the sort of things that they did. They marched long distances to fight in big battles, right? Usually they got a night's rest when they got there because they didn't fight at night, but still, the possibilities and stuff were still there, especially in a fantasy world where night could be irrelevant to a battle. We've got a few magic users. We'll throw up, what the equivalent of a flare or that sort of thing, and off we go. So,
Yeah, and that
because,
incidentally brings up a good point, is that most of your humanoids fight as fighters and
right.
save basically kind of as fighters. They're just in a fight for their life. If you're dealing with humanoids, they're going to generally have some sort of warlike culture and be trained in being able to do that, right?
Right, and if I remember correctly, pursuit and evasion was covered in part of one of the other ones. But the main thing is pursuit in the outdoors is generally similar to that. Settings underground or indoors. 3 general rules likelihood of pursuit apply. However, pursuit will certainly continue until evasion is successfully accomplished. The main gist of this is, I had my little mark there, that if you're able to outpace your opponents, given enough time, you'll get away and they'll give up. Right. But that is based on your slowest character. Not many monsters move at a rate of 6 inches. Most all characters in plate mail move at a rate of 6 inches.
Yeah.
So evading pursuit wearing heavy armor like that, not likely to happen.
Exactly.
But in general, in the dungeon setting, if you get around a corner, most monsters will let you go. They're not going to be busy trying to chase you through the maze because they understand the maze. Even though they might know it fairly well, it's just too much trouble for them to go ahead and do so. Right. So that would be one way of handling that kind of stuff as a dungeon master. Don't have them run you down, even though they know the dungeon. Give the players a fighting chance in some of these things. They've realized that the encounter is too much for them. They're trying to get away from it. Right. Don't be a bad DM and chase them all the way through the dungeon and pounce on them. Right. Give them that chance to evade that pursuit and stuff.
Right.
Well, I think we pretty much hit on most of the things that I had thought I might want to talk about this evening. Have you got anything else that you would like to add into it?
No, no. I think you kind of read my mind or through communication covered the things that I wanted to cover as well, and
Yeah.
I've I've enjoyed it. You
Dungeon
know.
Master G quote here: "The number one reason I would never survive in Dungeons and Dragons, running." Right. That's my. I used to run a lot. You know, that part of what we had to do in the Marine Corps was run everywhere, for crying out loud. But
Yeah.
if you see me running today, shoot whatever is chasing me. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's about it. And then for me, it better be like enough yellow jackets to kill me, to cause me to run, or like a Cthulhu or something like that.
Yeah, I got
A
calamine
hound of
lotion. I'll go fix that
Tendalos.
when I get inside. Yeah.
Right, right. Sting me, bastard. I might scrape my knee running. you know.
I'm gonna fall down and break a hip. I'm not running.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Well,
I
awesome.
appreciate everyone's input
Yeah,
and
actually, we
thank
got
you
some
as
good
always,
questions and
man.
stuff tonight. We'll definitely need to get on that designing good dungeons, good dungeon design concepts, and stuff like this. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
the way this game started, you know, with the nonsense dungeon, and just every room had some sort of, well, not every room, but rooms had some sort of goofy monster in there. That didn't last very long, even back then either. People were deciding, well, it's a lot of fun, but it's not making a whole lot of sense to me. So we'll talk about
Right.
good dungeon design and how to lay things out, and good ruins design for Gonzalo's case there, right? Even good
Yeah,
outdoor
he's
adventures and
basically
stuff like this should have some variety and stuff in the monsters and things to it as well. Yeah, we can talk about that. That'll be
right.
another great stream. We've had some questions about that. We still got a lot of stuff we want to get through in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we haven't even
Oh yeah.
touched the Monster Manual yet and some of the guidance that's in the Monster Manual. Considering that's the first book that came out, maybe we should look at that one pretty soon.
Yeah, and DMD makes a real good point here
Yeah.
too. You know, a random dungeon generator. You know.
Oh man, the random dungeon generators. Who has not run a game with the random dungeon generator? Right?
Exactly.
I don't
It's
think that
brilliant.
player exists. That was the basis of solo play. Was right there in the Dungeon Master Guide. That would be good. Yeah, let's talk about that sometime too. The random dungeon generator and solo play and stuff with that book. It's great. I've run it with players, and we just sat there and mapped them. If it didn't make any sense, okay, roll something different, right? Or
We could even
edit it to fit.
Yeah, I mean, we could even do that as some sort of special thing at some point where,
Yeah,
you pull up Fantasy Grounds or something like that, and you know, we kind of draw it as we go.
sure, that's possible. We can maybe have to set up some tiles or something in Fantasy Grounds and draw it as we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, we'd have to use their
Yeah,
drawing tools and whatnot. So there's but maybe if somebody buys you a coffee, you'll have enough caffeine to be able to make that approachable.
yes, I
Or
got
me a coffee because nobody's bought me a coffee.
I got to remember that. You didn't give me your link, so I can't give you your. I
That's
can't put up
okay.
your buy me a
That's
coffee
okay.
link.
I just want to see if somebody buys you one, and then I'll have a little bit of hope. And
Yeah,
if you guys want, you can buy me a beer, and then I'll slam it on the damn stream, right? So
right. I mean,
we'll make a game out of it.
if you like this
You
kind
buy
of
one
stuff,
for George or me.
yeah, if you like this stuff, you want to support us and stuff. That's the way of doing it. We, nowhere near the what we need to do to get monetized on YouTube and stuff, and not necessarily doing this so much for the money, but it is a good way of showing your appreciation and stuff. And then I don't have to go get a second job to pay off all the bills.
Right.
And I can retire that much sooner and spend more time doing this. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's what it's about. More time.
that's a dream. How would it have been to work for like TSR or something early on in the beginning, playing games for crying out loud for a living? That would be fantastic, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just being involved in that in sort of the headiness of that time would have been very interesting.
Mhm.
Maybe not the collapse, but the
No,
times of
no, the good
prosperity.
parts of it. Nobody wants to remember the bad stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and end this, and you and I will discuss more about what we want to do for the next one.
Yes, sir.
Ball's now in your court for what you want to do on your channel for another stream. I'll let you post all that kind of stuff, information out there. I'll
Right
reflect it
on.
as well.
Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
so I'll cut you loose and then get back to doing what I got to do here to close this stuff down.
Yes, sir. And thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining. Alrighty, let me go to remove from stage. There we go. All right. Well, thanks for joining us here on the Great Old Ones channel and talking about first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you want to know when we're doing it next. Do put comments, all that kind of stuff there that's on the stream, all that stuff. Check my other videos. Check Doomswords videos out. Go check Yang's stuff out, Dungeon Delver, if you've not taken a look at any of their stuff. If you like these old school games, those are some great channels to go watch and review these old school game concepts and stuff. And we'll definitely be back again for some more. So thanks again for joining me on this Thursday night live stream, and we will see you all next time.